Welcome to the Sense of Soul podcast. We are your hosts, Shanna and Mandy.
Grab your coffee, open your mind, heart, and soul. It's time to awaken.
Hello, listeners. Oh my gosh, do we have an amazing episode for you. Today, Shanna and I are beyond humbled and excited to have on the Kim Krans. Her deck, the Wild Unknown Tarot, is probably one of Shanna and I's favorite. We use it all the time, and it has become a huge part of our journey. We just absolutely love her creativity. We love everything that she stands for. I am so excited to talk to her about her creative process and how her art has evolved and the new things she has coming up. Kim, thank you so much for taking time to come and talk to Shanna and I. It is an absolute true honor. Thank you and welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're such an honor. I'd say you are definitely my go-to deck. So I'm super excited. I just know how many times I've read things that you've wrote, and then I thought, wow, she must be freaking an amazing soul. I was just super excited to meet you because I know you're going to be as beautiful as your decks are.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
My mom had given me her tarot deck. I don't even know how she ended up with it. You know, she's totally Catholic. I got to know kind of like the tarot that way, but I feel like your deck brought energy into the cards for me, where before it was just a tarot deck that I was working with.
It's interesting. I hear that a lot, that Wild Unknown Tarot is a bit of a gateway deck. I think it is commonly the first deck for a lot of people. So I'm honored that it's that. It wasn't my vision, but it ended up, I think, being an easy entry point for people to get into the concepts of the cards.
Yeah, I will have to say that it was also my first deck, and I was mesmerized by the art. It drew me in. And I've actually struggled going to any other decks because of that. I feel very connected to it. I find also that when I'm using your deck, the colors that are on the cards speak volumes about even the chakra system to me and align with what the card is saying and the message behind it, which was really cool. And then also the ABC Dream book is absolutely my daughter's favorite. It's how she learned her ABCs.
I like that. They're all colorful and like in the background. All these are kind of rainbow. The rainbow, like I feel like whenever I see rainbows, I feel like they mean like somebody's kind and that she loves birds a lot.
My God.
I mean, she wanted to come on to meet you, but she truly, she learned her ABCs through this book. We bought it to put on our boutique truck. She picked it out. Absolutely loves it. So thank you for that.
So cool. The kids' books are kind of like the stepsister of all of the products, or like the forgotten one. But when I hear that they're out circulating and families are responding to them, it warms my heart so much. And there's a couple board books that are coming out next year that I had self-published, but they'll be in wider distribution availability next year. So I'm so happy to hear that.
I saw that. I'm like, man, I want to order this. And then it was like, oh, it's not going to be out till next year. Shoot.
Yeah.
My 9-year-old is an artist. I mean, hands down, was born this way. And it's what she does like all day. Like she doesn't want to do her homework. And I'm just like, you need to stop drawing. You need to do your math. She's like, screw math, unless I can draw it, which she does. But she and I have been doing this one book. I would love your version of this book. It's a parent and child art book. So every day we do a page together, and it's like one side's done for the child and one's for the adult. My side is like stick figures, stupid. And hers is all intricate and amazing. But it's like draw your emotion, draw something you like about yourself, just real positive and beautiful.
It's so cool that you do that. What a cool practice.
Oh, it has been amazing because, you know what, I have a lot of creativity. She's got a lot of art. So it's someplace that we can actually bond and just spend, even if it's only 30 minutes together and to look back upon. And I think it's beautiful. But I think that kids need more stuff like that. We've been talking about this since we started on our journey. Like, they're the ones who need to know this stuff because they're our future.
Yeah, it's true.
It's so true.
Do you have kids?
I don't. No kiddos.
But you speak to them. I love it.
True.
Yeah. I mean, you're literally under the comforter in my hands nightly with me and my daughter. So yeah, that must feel so cool for you to know that it's circulating around and that these little ones are literally learning their ABCs this way.
So cool. Thank you for reminding me.
Speaking of children, I really enjoyed seeing the photographs on your website of yourself when you were young.
Who were you as a little girl?
Well, it's a question I almost like to slip away from because I so often love like when the work appears without me in a sense. I think that's one of the ways that the tarot has done well. It's almost like when I'm doing my best work, I feel like I disappear and these other magical images come up and these words and things that I don't even feel sometimes like I've written. So I can go into my biography. It's a good story of like small town girl, farm town in rural Michigan and not much culture around there. And I started to draw and then got a scholarship to an art school when I was 14 and left home. I lived at a boarding art school and studied drawing every day with my teacher, and I worked with her for 3 years. And then I just kept drawing and drawing and writing. And I was very blessed with scholarships and financial aid when I was a kid. I came from a very hardworking family, and we didn't have the means to even know about art schools across the country, let alone pay for them. So my teachers in high school let me know about some schools in New York, and I applied to Cooper Union, which is a full tuition school. And I got in and came to the city and, continued to draw. And that was how I made my way. I thought my path was going to be in the New York art world, like showing in galleries, which I did from college through grad school, my mid-20s. And then that kind of flopped. It petered out in a way that was really painful, actually. Then I had like no money, no projects, no gallery, no idea of what to do. And I moved to Philadelphia and I moved into a renovated church. And that's where I drew the tarot deck. And then everything shifted. So that's the long and short of the bio.
I can't believe that at 14 you left home to pursue art. So it's just been, it kind of like my daughter's just been within you forever.
Yeah, it has been. I saw a photo. My mom sent me this photo the other day of like when I was in third grade, I loved drawing contests when I was a kid. I was obsessed with them. And I entered like a forest fire prevention competition when I was in third grade. And my drawing got selected as the winner in the state of Michigan. So they made it into billboards all over the state. And my mom like drove me around and had me pose in front of the billboards. And this is like late 80s. So I have like this radical outfit on and like fluorescent colors and toned hair. What's really wild is that it's a picture of an owl on a branch with like a tree line below. It basically looks like a less advanced cover of like 1-2-3 Dream with the owl and the tree branch. And I basically feel like I've been drawing that same drawing for 35 years now.
Have you ever like tapped in to see why the owl's always been there?
The nighttime is such a creative time, such a mysterious time, such a sacred time. And I think just the image of the owl being eyes open at night and that can see all around, not to mention its call, its beautiful sound. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just one of the more moving images that nature gives us. For me, it's just like so beautiful.
Mm-hmm. They're mesmerizing. Do you think there was some spirit in there? Was there anything going on as far as that church energy with that deck?
Oh my God, there was a lot of church energy going on with that deck. Since you ask, I'll tell the story of the church. It had beautiful stained glass windows, like vaulted ceilings, opaque. The windows were kind of like those shower doors that you can't see out of, you can't see details. And I went to a psychiatrist at that time because I was like, I feel depressed. I just left New York, super confused, drawing this deck. I don't know what's going on. I was doing a lot of yoga, started with mantra meditation. I really felt like the contrasts in my life were getting stronger, like the lights were getting lighter, but the darks felt like they were getting darker. So I go to this therapist and she's blind, which I didn't know going into the session. And it was such an interesting session, just the way that she responded to me, the way that I felt speaking with her, because she didn't have the visuals that one typically would in a session like that. And I told her, I'm living in this church, I feel depressed. And she said, wait a second, like, what can you see out the windows? And I said, oh, they're beautiful stained glass, it's amazing. And she said, can you see if it's raining? Can you see if a tree branch? Can you see if a bird lands on a tree branch? Can you see the horizon line? And I said, no. And so we talked, throughout the session. And at the end, she said, I rarely tell people something this strong at the end of a very first session, but churches are not meant for living in. They're meant to transport us from this plane. They're meant for worship and praise and to be exalted in a sense. And so she was like, you need to move immediately because you're experiencing being disoriented by not being able to see yourself on earth through the windows when you look outside. And she said, you're not getting enough light. Finish your project, move out of the church. And she closed with, it's my job to live in the dark, not yours.
Oh my God. That is so deep.
I felt just completely undone.
Oh God. Were you scared?
I was kind of scared. I was a little bit spooked. And she was so powerful and calm. And she just had such an interesting presence about her. And I saw her throughout that year when I was making the deck. I didn't live in the church for that long, but it was the vessel in which the deck came to be. I mean, from an alchemy point of view, it's a really interesting kind of compressive chamber in which to, like a cauldron in which to make something.
Wow.
And completely unique, and definitely had its downside for the day-to-day life. But in terms of getting me into a different headspace, as churches are architecturally designed to do, it worked in a sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. And what she said is so true. Churches are built for worship and to move us and transport us. Wow. Have you ever thought about going into a local church and be like, can I rent out your space for a week while I work on my new deck?
I'm really interested in spaces and the effect they have on art. I draw in hotels a lot now. I mean, hotels are nothing compared to a church, but they kind of have this transient quality to them. You can kind of drift into a cool headspace. So I always take my sketchbooks with me. And sometimes I just go to a hotel and draw for the weekend. It's super weird, but
I mean, you just need a temporary place to dwell to kind of go inside and shut off that outside world.
Yep.
Wow.
And I have my art studio, but it's a specific thing. All the spaces that we have, especially once we get interested in meditation and shrines and temple and the idea of place and containment of energy and kind of centralizing energy, when you apply that to an art studio, it gets really, really fascinating. What are the drawings I would make inside a church compared to inside a temple in India, compared to, at a site of devastation that's under restoration. I've done projects where I've gone to a concentration camp. I did a project on Anne Frank for my most recent thesis project, and I went to the concentration camp where she died. It's a beautiful memorial site at this point, but I went there and just observed the energy and made drawings, and I was there for several days in a row, just seeing what is the quality of the energy here, and is there anything that wants to be seen through drawing or writing that this space needs to express? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So can we talk about the wild unknown?
The wild unknown as a phrase comes from a Bob Dylan song. And it was always very enchanting to me, and I could never figure it out what the phrase meant, you know?
Oh, yeah, one of those.
So I I ended up using it as the kind of moniker for my work when I first started self-publishing. And then, you know, time after time, it kind of humbles me in that it keeps asking me to be present to the unknown and the mystery and the presence that's there, whether it be darkness or light or, you know, tension or love or acceptance, forgiveness. It's all so mysterious and moving. So the name constantly asks me to be present with what is new and unknown. And once it's known, it goes into our repertoire, but then we move to a new kind of growth edge, and there's always more to know.
Wow. That reminds me of Sean Johnson's new album called Mystery. Similar reason. But I think that that's what's amazing right now is we're so expansive, right? You know, we're outside of that box, and outside of that box right now is unknown and is mystery. And it's for you to just like, there's so much adventure and exploration out there right now, which is why Mandy and I do what we do, because we didn't have a clue what was going on when we first started on this journey. Because the journey of outside of the box, we should have named our podcast Out of the Box.
Outside the box.
We talk about it so much, but really conditioned, you know, from the generations before. So it is that unknown, and it can be a wild ride. I love the name of it.
I relate to that. I'm 41 this year, and I feel the patterning, which is the known, in myself, and then I get glimpses of a new potential, which is the unknown. There has to be so much kind of courage to keep moving towards the unknown, especially with the messages around how we're supposed to have everything figured out. And, you know, whether you're an artist or entrepreneur or musician or whatever, it's like as if we're supposed to have the complete package totally set and constructed, and as if it's fixed, you know?
Yeah.
So
absolutely. And I think going back to what Shanna said earlier, we find that a large part of our listeners is the younger generations. These humans that are in their 20s are seem a little more evolved and more open-minded and really kind of born into the unknown to start. And so it's exciting. It's really cool to talk to that generation and the generations below them. I know that Shanna and I are asked to use your deck a lot with that age group. They are so interested. I mean, Shanna and I will have a group of like 10 to 15 teenagers that instead of going out partying will come over onto our house on a Friday night to break out your deck because they want to know more. And it's helping them realize that they're not weird and they're not strange and there's nothing wrong with them and that they're gifted. And it's so cool that through your deck, you can see like this light in their eyes, because a lot of them, you know, are empaths, or a lot of them are really artsy, and a lot of them express themselves differently through their clothes and what they wear. And so they've been kind of told that they're weird or that their energy's off or that they're ADHD, but really your deck for me, and I don't know how I got to this conversation right now, but it opens up this place with that generation where they look at me like with hope. It's so cool through your art and the messages and your deck. Would you not agree, Shanna?
Yeah, I was going to say just a week ago, my daughter had been offered a promotion and she didn't know. She's 22. She's in her comfort zone. She's like, Mom, can you read my cards? Let's just see what the cards are saying right now. And I said, sure, what deck do you want me to use? And she's like, come on. She's like, Mom, the only one that ever tells me really is the Wild Unknown deck. And I'm like, okay, it's amazing. It's true. And I know that it has something to do with my guides coming in and utilizing your divine tool that you passively alchemized. Love it. But yeah, Yeah, it's the go-to deck.
Well, I think this all goes back to the phrase I think, Mandy, you used at the beginning of the conversation. It was like being mesmerized by art. And art has such a powerful way of like getting us out of our narrative and into the imagination, and we can like drop into this other space, and it's so expansive and open, and somehow all the problems we thought we had to fix like in this other world, they start to take on like a different quality, and being able to sense like that there's purpose behind the difficulties, and that there's messages kind of everywhere, and that the world is alive. And
Yeah.
you know, I like also this idea that the younger generations have a different orientation, more expansiveness. I think of it like if we're on a grid, say my brain is kind of like a box, like a rectangle. I feel like the younger generations are more, they're shifted, they're more like a hexagram, where things start to interlock like a beehive, where they can
Oh, yeah.
integrate with and collaborate with, rather than
Great.
kind of the hierarchy of the box. And
Mhm.
I have a deck coming out in the spring, an alchemy deck, and the cards are hexagram shaped like that for this reason, so that they start to fit together and touch and interlock in a way that can then inform the meaning of the reading. And it mimics that of a beehive and some other patterns in nature that have like incredible intelligence. And it goes from this idea that like each one of us has to be this epic hero, like who figures out everything, to orienting around community and togetherness and connection and compassion, rather than this idea that you have to hold all the pressure yourself and figure everything out and achieve all the dreams, you know, without anyone's help. I say that as a person who's relentlessly kind of like a lone wolf in a lot of ways. And I'm just getting to the point in my life now where that's not the model I want to use anymore. I want to be in the hive with all the buzzing bees around me and have those people be like super nourishing and radiant, making some kind of honey that is healing.
Yeah, that Gen Z, they believe in raising their voices and fighting for what they believe in, and togetherness, and having equal rights and being kind to each other, and they speak up about it, because I believe all those things too, and through this podcast we've been able to speak up about it, but really my generation really didn't speak up.
Yep.
So it's hopeful, and I think that tools like what you're creating is that's being utilized by these generations is exactly what they need, because they don't have the structure, because they come from a generation that's closed up.
Yeah.
Think about the 60s. In the 60s, it was like love and peace, and they were smoking a lot of marijuana. Now you got marijuana legalized in most states, so they're all peace and love again. Maybe the love's coming from the marijuana.
That's so funny. Do you know that song, If I Ruled the World? Imagine that. At the beginning of it says something like a man smoking weed with the cops like walking by or something like that. But it was like his dream, like maybe that would happen one day.
Yeah.
And then I was listening to that just this morning. I'm like, look at that.
Wait, hold on. Who sings that?
Oh God, you know which one I'm talking about, right?
Yes.
Is it Kanye?
No, heck no, girl.
Okay, wait, who is it?
No.
If I ruled the world, imagine that.
I was gonna say Tears for Fears. Okay.
No, it's a rap. I must be singing really off.
Well, you sound beautiful to me, but that's because you've been my best friend for so long.
But you know what I'm talking about? But he was singing a song. It's almost like, he was predicting what he wanted to see in the future. Like, why are we putting people in jail for lifetimes over weed?
Imagine smoking weed in the street without cops harassing.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
Sadly.
Okay, well, we'll have to figure it out.
I don't know this song. I was feeling an Alanis Morissette vibe when you were singing, and I was totally envisioning
like
something from the early 90s. So I don't know.
I don't know. Okay, hold on.
Is.
talk about perspective. That's hilarious. So I got Tears for Fears. She got Atlantis Morissette, and you're talking about Kanye West. Like, what the heck?
I don't know. I must have been saying it really bad. Not either Tears for Fears or just
so Kim, I wanted to tell you that I read something that you wrote about. It was a suggestion, and I really liked it. It was about how starting out, I could use my non-dominant hand if I wanted to do some art and just kind of let that spirit, that emotion flow through, which would be for me, my left hand. You described it in such beautiful words and why you suggested that. Can you talk about that for a minute?
I love this question. Yes. Well, you could think a really simple way to practice with the known and the unknown would be with your two hands. The dominant hand, typically the right hand, would be your known hand. You know what's going to happen. You put a pen in your hand, you know what the letters will look like for the most part. The left hand is the unknown. So even trying to draw your name is going to be more complex. So a really easy way to practice engaging with the mystery and the intuition and to the uncontrollable, the uncontrolled. We talk about everyone wants more intuition, everyone wants more insight. The thing is, it's not a controlled force. We don't get to say what the intuition is going to be, what the hit is. So we have to be brave enough to include that which we cannot control. And the non-dominant hand is a great example of engaging with lack of control. It feels so bad to write. You're like, what the hell? I can't even make a letter B or a letter X, But really, it's the brain is starting to trust that it's okay. It's okay if stuff looks messy. It's okay if it's confusing. And we're just working on something new right now, and we're in new territory. That allows a kind of new approach to come in. And it is definitely more related to like the lunar, the unknown, the mystery. You can, I use my left hand when I pull cards out of a jar. I use my left hand for most things if I want to bypass the intellect and go to the creative side of myself.
That's awesome. That is so cool. How long did it take you to do your Wild Unknown, the original deck?
I did research for a while, and then when I sit down to draw the decks, they're usually 6 months to a year of drawing and revising and writing. And I always think going into the project, oh, this is going to be a quick one. I know what I'm doing. But again, as soon as I start, I'm like, oh, wait, I have no idea how this is going to turn out. And then almost every time I complete a deck, I finish the last card and I'm like, okay, I finally know how to do this project. I should start over. And thankfully,
I have done that same thing.
Oh my God. I don't have the time to start over. There is something great about deadlines in that way. But yeah, when I finished the alchemy deck, we just sent it to the printer, last month. And I thought like, okay, now I know what this deck should be like. And it's okay. I don't get to redo it.
Yeah.
You're like, oh shit.
I know.
So we've been working on our deck for, since, I don't know, like maybe like end of spring or springtime. And I do the same thing because I feel like in some way, like I'm a little bit of a perfectionist in some way. Or, what else happens to me is that I have like this vision of something. And then I'm like, oh no, like that's wrong. This card is completely wrong. This is what I visioned. So now I have to do it all over. My son's tried to help me because he's an artist, and I'm telling you, these kids know better than I, but he's like, you have all of them in one folder. He's like, Mom, start transferring over to a new folder, the ones that you are 100% in love with. And so that way, when you're looking at the folder, you're not looking at all of the ones that you've already done. Like you're only looking at, these kids are so great, right? I have ADHD for sure. So I struggle. And so he's like, you're overwhelming yourself by looking at all of them. And we're just creating a like oracle deck for like sense of soul, like just everything that Mande and I have gone through over the years and what we've talked about here on this podcast and what we're still learning. But for me, it's not just art. It's what the card's meaning is. I want, like, when you're reading it, for you to see almost like an entire story, in each card.
You bring up so many fascinating points about art making. Overwhelm is so real. It's just anything one can do to like help themselves not be overwhelmed is really great. But also making a deck, a tarot deck or oracle deck, it is in and of itself an initiatory experience. And by that, I mean to say, like, working with those concepts, working with the images and pairing them and getting deep into the process will do its work on the psyche and the life of the maker. So it's a living thing. It can't be static where you're like, I'm drawing this and that's just something I'm doing on the side and it's no big deal. If you're really going to study and sit with the concepts, like, stuff really starts to shift in the life. That's the
Agreed.
power. That's the power of it all.
It is.
So to know that, like, whatever time it takes is the time needed for the process, for the process to occur. There's so many different types of decks these days. And, some people have judgment around this one's too dark and this one's too light and that one's too fluffy and this one. But it's like, we find the things we need at that time and they hold meaning for us. And whether you're just using the tarot to post something on Instagram that's beautiful, or you're meditating on it for 3 hours a day on a single card,
Yeah.
I don't have any judgment. Everyone comes into it exactly where they are and gets just what they need at that time in their life. So I think the decks are very generous. They meet us anywhere, beginners, advanced, as long as we don't start to become jaded and closed off, they meet us.
Yeah, it's a living energy. I want to share this one story. You'll think it's crazy, but so each card is, very meaningful to Mande and I, of course. And one of the cards is about spirit guides. And my spirit guide is Archangel Michael. I talk about him a lot on our podcast. So everything in our deck is about stuff that they've listened to our podcast. They're like, oh yeah, that's, Shanna and Mande. So I always joke, well, kind of, that I shouldn't say joke. He really does. Archangel Michael looks like Brad Pitt. I mean, like, straight up, he's some like Legends of the Fall Brad Pitt. So I'm trying to do a very close likeness of Brad Pitt, to give that, our listener will know. They're like, oh yeah, that's Shanna's Archangel Michael. And as I'm doing this, and I am like spending hours on this one. Well, that was like the first version of him. And as I'm doing the art, I'm listening to a true crime podcast because I'm a total true crime junkie. And it's True Crime Garage. And all of a sudden, I mean, like 13 minutes into the episode, and all of a sudden you hear,
Saint Michael, the Archangel, defend us in our day of battle. Protect us against the deceit and wickedness of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And you, Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, banish into hell Satan and all of the evil spirits who roam through the world seeking the ruin of souls. Saint Michael is one of the principal angels. His name was the war cry of the good angels, as he led them in the battle fought in heaven against those led by the dragon, who was in fact the devil or Satan. The devil and his followers were defeated, and they were thrown down to earth. According to Scripture, Christian tradition gives to Saint Michael 4 offices: to be the champion of God's people, to fight against Satan, to call away from earth and bring men's souls to judgment, and to rescue the souls of the faithful from the power of the enemy, especially at the hour of death.
For no reason, Kim, no reason. And I'm like looking down at my art and I'm like, what's going on? It was so freaking cool.
It was so weird.
I actually screenshot everything and sent it to Mandy, like everything he said and like the art I was working on. Like, this is wild. This is super wild, unknown. But yeah, it was so amazing. So you can tell there is this divine energy that is formed around each card. And the times when I haven't felt that, I scratch it.
It's so cool. I love that story. Oh, the archangels are like, they're a whole thing. I used to be a little unsure about them. I think because of like my relationship with Christianity growing up, and I was just like, what is this? What is this energy? And once I kind of like opened the gates and just like accepted the idea of Archangel Michael, Gabriel, even just like saying their name or saying the prayers and stuff, it's so powerful. I don't even know what to make it. I'm not even sure how to talk about it, but I love that.
Well, he's pretty hot, like Brad Pitt.
Oh my God, you're so funny. Love you.
Speaking of, this
So
one
funny.
is not very hot, Kim. And either is this one.
Yeah.
And the buffalo, so it's the 10 of swords and the 9 of swords in your deck. Oh, when people see those, they're like, oh God, what's happened to me now?
Yeah.
They're pretty
Those are
dark.
real, those cards. I mean, I thought of this earlier. It's a little bit of a dark story, but I'll share it anyways. You had asked about if I had kids at this point, which I don't, and that's been a really challenging journey for me through the years. And I remember when the deck first came out, and I was driving in the car, and I stopped at a rest stop, and I was headed to an ashram. I just finished the deck. I had like the first prototype or something. Will you hold up the cards that you had just now?
Yeah.
I think you had the the 9 and the 10 of swords. Okay,
Yeah.
so I was in the car and I asked, my former husband at the time was also in the car. He was going to drop me off at the ashram, and he was in the rest stop, and I asked the deck, should I get pregnant now? Like, what's the deal with me and kids? Shuffle the deck, and I pulled the 9 of swords, that card that you just held up, the card of nightmare and turmoil. And I was really freaked out. And that has been part of my journey with fertility, and then losing pregnancies, eventually getting a divorce, many stages to the multiple tricky complications. And I think about that card often, and it's so easy to think like, oh, like blame it on the card or say that's so dark or whatever. But in a way, I now can look at that journey and know no matter what happens in my life, whether I become a biological mom or a mom in another way, or through metaphorically through my work, that the card helped me to know that I was on a path of meaning. None of this is for naught. That my struggle with fertility is something that helps me be a more compassionate person and show up differently as an artist and have more compassion for my fellow beings. And it's there's something about the tarot cards that lets us know we're never alone. If that card exists, everyone experiences the 9 of swords in some part of their life. And that is also their gift. If they can stay close to it and hold it with meaning, like this is a bigger storyline than just me trying to do IVF, There's a bigger purpose here. And that's a great gift of the tarot, constantly reminding me there's something bigger at play. I can't see it now. And that feeling of that card has shifted. Now, when I think about my fertility path, I think of it more like, I don't know what card it would be, maybe Wheel of Fortune. That I'm being like turned around through a kind of destined path. And I don't know what right side up looks like. I don't know the outcome, but I'm blessed and protected and held, even though I can't control the outcome. I can't like get what I want, so to speak.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. It almost reminds me of the inside of your deck where it says, welcome to the Wild Unknown Tarot. You'll find no wrongs or rights inside this box, only mirrors for reflection. Open your mind, draw a card, and have fun on your journey. That about wraps that up.
I actually wanted to ask you about that. There's a lot of power in the box that your cards goes into. There's something just so beautiful about how you designed it. I mean, I'm so attracted to it that like a normal deck and just the box is like so boring to me now. I also love that it's like this protection around them. Can you talk about, designing that and the meaning of it to you?
Yeah, and this is probably a time I should mention the more portable version that's coming out this year, the Pocket Tarot, which is super cute, and it comes in like a mini box. It's like travel size, so you can pop it in your purse or a bag when you're traveling. It's in a tin, kind of like Altoids. It's bigger than Altoids, but the metal tin with a super tiny guidebook. I have it here. I know your viewers can't see it, but it's like really tiny.
Adorable.
It's like its little baby.
Super adorable. And a tiny book.
I want that.
Wait, will it fit in my bra?
It might fit in your bra. It might. But yeah, the box, just having it sort of feel like opening the box is a ritualized experience. So it feels like, oh, I'm entering a kind of different universe right now. That's the idea of having the packaging be more elaborate. You feel you're entering through some kind of mysterious door.
Yeah, sometimes we get these decks that are so hard and are so awkward to hold in your hands. They're not my go-to decks just because of that. For me, myself, I would want it to feel good. The energy feel good in your hands.
Yeah, I'm excited for you all to get the Hex deck next year, the alchemy deck, because it's really interesting in the hand, the Hex shape. It was really cool to draw in that shape, very different for me. So
it's a powerful shape. I feel like right now I'm going through this shift in my life. My whole life, I have been extremely vulnerable and raw with my addictions, with the darkness around me and my addiction, to the shameful things that I did when I was in my addiction, not only to myself, but to others. I've put it out on social media. I was a person that didn't have a secret and that just put every ounce of my life out there for everyone to see. And right now I'm kind of in this space where I'm keeping more to myself. I'm not even sure why. I don't know. I'm in this like space where I'm just being a little more private with myself for the first time ever. It's a weird space for me to be in, and I don't know why, but I'm embracing it. And I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but based on what you said at the beginning of this interview, that sometimes, when we asked you about your childhood, that sometimes you like to keep that absent and you like to keep it separate from your art. And so then when I saw that you did this book, The Blossoms and Bones, I mean, you're putting yourself out there. It's like you're doing the opposite of me. You're shifting more into putting more of yourself out there, telling a little bit more about what you've been through. Was that hard for you? And also thank you for putting it out there, because talking about your eating disorder and your miscarriages and your divorce and being so raw with your story, how did that feel to you? And thank you for putting it out there.
Thanks, Mandy, for bringing it up. Yeah, that was a wild, wild project. I mean, the reason that I could go there and touch on those topics and kind of tell my story was, again, to go back to this idea of being mesmerized by art. Like I literally used the art to express all these complications that I was going through around disordered eating, body dysmorphia. Who am I, after being married for 12 years and thinking I should be a mom and I should be all these things in the perfect house. And then after all of that, really just combusting or collapsing, dissolving, who am I? And I took a lot of that judgment and pressure and I aimed it at myself, which resulted in the eating disorder and a lot of criticism around my physical being. And so my first step was to start drawing it, process called Draw the Feeling, which resulted in the book that you referenced, Blossoms and Bones. It came out right into pandemic, which was kind of complicated for launching a book. Some of the wild unknown audience was ready to delve into, some weren't. It brought in some new readers and new voices into the fold. To go back to this idea, like the things that are challenging don't feel like it, but they really are like such deep blessings in our life. Hindsight is 2020. We can see it later, but when we're in it, trying to learn day to day to be with what is and continue, making my work and being connected amidst any kind of pain that comes up.
We talk about that a lot. It's that pain to purpose.
Yeah.
So did I hear this right? The Wild Unknown deck was in the Netflix series Atypical. That series blew me away because my son, who is on the spectrum, reminds me so much of the main character.
I just love that show. Like I knew they were going to use the tarot. It's like in season 3 something, pretty deep into the series. And I was like, oh, I don't know, it's some trendy show. Who knows what what the deal is? But I didn't even know what it was about. And I sat down and watched it, and I watched it in like a weekend, the whole thing.
Yeah,
it's
me too.
so good. And it goes back to that idea of like not being alone and being able to see, our own family patternings in all sorts of ways through that show. They just did such a good job. And it's also like funny and so entertaining. And yeah, then they bust out the tarot deck like in season 3, and I was like losing my shit. By the time I saw it, I was like so in love with the characters, and I was like, I can't believe this. I don't get like so starstruck like very often, and because I kind of think of the deck as like it really isn't me. It's just the deck. It does its thing in the world. I don't know. It's so crazy, but it does. So when it's on a show, I don't typically like freak out, but I was really freaking out. It was so cool.
I think the one takeaway that I really got by researching you over the past few days and really like kind of digging into who you are is the takeaway for myself was I've always judged what comes out of my hands. Like I tried to draw a picture of what I saw when I had my near-death experience. And there was a lot of crying. There was a lot of, telling my daughter what I was writing. It was very emotional, and it helped me like release and reflect. And I think when someone's not truly as creative or isn't an artist, like I'm not, like I was looking at what was in front of me and judging it versus the experience of it, because the experience was perfect. Your Blossoms and Bones, it's like remembering that left hand thing, it's unknown. It might not make sense to other people or whatever you designed. I might get my perspective might be different when I look at it, but it's exactly how it's supposed to be in the experience of the art.
Yeah. Wow. I'm so interested. You tried to draw, you drew the feeling that you had of the near-death experience?
Yeah, I tried to draw the feeling and then also like what I physically saw. I mean, no, not physically saw, because I wasn't a physical being. I was a soul. So I didn't have eyeballs, but what my soul was experiencing. But so so last night I pulled it back out after researching about you, and I looked at it and it was perfect. There was no judgment because you reminded me it might look like, scribbles to someone else, but it expresses everything that it was supposed to. Does that make sense?
Yep. And it just goes back to this point of like the image is alive. Like it's going to change as you change, and it will continue to be with you. Sometimes people ask like, do you really believe in tarot? Do you believe in this? Do you believe in witchcraft? Do you believe in, well, I believe in image. And that doesn't mean it's drawn. It can be an image in the heart. It can be an image in the mind. It can be a sound. The way song is imagination. It's something that compels us. It can come in the form of a dream. It can come in the form of a lover, whatever it is, a goal, a vision. But I really believe in the power of that to show up at the right time in our life and to continue to slowly unfold. If it is a rich image, like what Carl Jung called like compelling image, it will not reveal its full form immediately. If it does, it's like a stop sign. That's just a stop sign. It's just done. You know, there's no need to keep thinking about what the stop sign means. But that's what's so cool about the tarot, about the vision you're talking about. It constantly asks you to come back to it because its work is like never finished.
Thank you for that. That was beautiful. Sometimes I go back and look at my writings from right after my near-death experience and what I put out there. And my story has evolved and changed. And that because I have changed and my spirituality has changed, my journey has changed. So when I look back at my original writings that I put out there, I'm like, well, if I put out now what I feel about it or what I'm seeing, it will seem like what I wrote the first time was a lie or bullshit. It wasn't a stop sign. So thank you for that. It evolved and the story evolved and the meanings of things that I saw evolved. So great reminder.
This is such an important point because I look back at the tarot deck that I made as a self-publish, and it's now 10 years old. I know so much more about the tarot now. I know more about spirituality, supposedly all these modalities. I've gone to grad school where we studied Carl Jung and synchronicity and depth psychology and its relationship to symbol and all blah, 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 blah. Fill in the blank of all the things that I've learned in the last 10 years. So I look back at this deck and I feel incredibly self-conscious. I want to rewrite the guidebook like every day. I want the cards to be different because my art has changed. But when I think about what deck I would draw now as a tarot deck compared to then, I don't know if knowing more, supposedly, is helpful actually. Because what it does is it makes the door smaller and smaller and smaller for the viewer to, or the reader to get through. It makes it more specific, like as if they have to have more scholarly, like I want it to be more scholarly, the tarot deck. And that leaves the 15-year-old in Nebraska who's trying to figure out how to tell their parents some complicated thing or gender, it leaves them out because I suddenly got really smart and scholarly. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So
Andy and I wouldn't have gotten it.
Yeah, I don't, as painful as it is to like wish the thing was more advanced, I don't want to leave people behind. So where I was just perfect for that time and for the people who are interfacing with it exactly to be able to use it. And as I get older, the decks that I make become more specific and the people can slip in and out of them as they see fit. But closing the door, so it's only me and my scholarly companions, like 5 of us sitting around in an esoteric circle.
You're like, I can't talk to Carl Jung here on Earth, so.
No, I mean, these people are dead.
Wow, that's so true. I have goosebumps all over me when you said that. It's so true though. And guess what? The world really received it just as it is.
Speaking of the world receiving it, it came out in 2012 and then it just boomed in 2016. Why do you think that it happens like that?
I self-published in 2012 and couldn't really keep it in stock. It just kept selling out and Instagram was getting big at that time and the two things converged and then HarperCollins came and picked it up and they released it in 2016 so to a much wider distribution and it actually came out the day that Donald Trump was elected.
Whoa, I had a feeling something big that happened with this deck in 2016. Yeah. Wow.
Yep. We were supposed to have a release party that night at my house. And I remember at like 5 p.m., everyone called each other and said, don't anyone come to anyone's houses. Like I'm just on the couch crying. So anyway, that the deck came out in a wider distro into that reality.
So actually you're coming out with Unknown notebook collection. I love that. I'm going to definitely put that in my daughter's stocking, and the note cards too.
They're available right now for pre-order, and they should be shipping mid-November, so plenty of time for the holidays. But
Okay,
yeah,
perfect.
I used to send actually tarot cards. I would pull a card for someone and send it to them in the mail with a little note. And this is the note cards that you spoke of are kind of like a version of that where you don't have to lose one of the cards in your deck. So they
Oh my
all
God,
have
that is so
different
perfect.
cards in them.
Do you have
Yeah.
a full deck? Is the full deck like all the cards in
not-
the note card? Okay. Not all
Not
of them.
the full deck. I think it's like 12 or something like that, but it's kind of the faves, the best of.
Would you, and if you want to say no, please feel free, but would it be odd to ask you to maybe pull a card for Shanna and I for Sense of Soul?
Oh my God, I will do it. You know what I have in my studio is this, the viewers can't see it, but this is a giant, super giant jar.
Oh, I was going to ask you when you said you pulled a card from a jar with your left hand. I was like, in a jar? I was trying to picture that.
Yeah, so I have in my studio all the decks put together, several of them in one giant jar. And then when people come to the studio to visit, they can pull one and then take it with them. But I'll pull,
This is
how
so
about
cool.
just one as a theme for all of us?
Okay, yeah, that sounds fun.
Okay, pulling one card for all of us and the listeners. Ooh, wow. This is from the Animal Spirit deck. This is the Vulture card. This is one of my very favorite cards of the deck. The Vulture is like a transmutator of, I guess I could say, pain. I'm going to hodgepodge this if there's any scientists or biologists listening, but it basically has some ability in its stomach, in its digestion, to assimilate bacteria. So Vulture can eat, this is getting gory for a sec, just stay with me.
Yeah,
Vultures can eat roadkill, and they can digest in their system and transmutate like infection or any kind of bacteria. Whereas like if a bear were to come and eat the dead deer on the road, or not that a bear would, but if another animal would, a wolf or what have you, it would mess up their stomach. So vultures have this way, so cool. They don't create new energy. Like they don't go out and kill things. They take from what is, and they get their energy from what is. They also ride on like thermal waves in the sky. They don't like flap their wings like a hawk does. They get up there and then they ride on the existing energy. So there's this theme around them that they find sources of energy and they can digest it and assimilate it in a way that keeps the ecosystem going. So they're like of great benefit to the ecosystem because they clean up the dead creatures and are nourished by them, and the bacteria doesn't spread through the other animals of the forest. Wow. Again, it's been a while since I thought about the vulture, so everyone should just research on their own, but that's something that always stays with me, the vulture. They have that scary neck, like
right.
Because they don't have feathers here, so that they don't get that bacteria trapped around their heads. They can go in and eat. That's amazing. Yeah. So that I'm just speaking like kind of about habitat and their behavior, but you can think about how that would translate spiritually too. The ability to be with the grief that's happening now and the losses and the complexity, and to transmutate or digest it so it doesn't spread unconsciously. Yeah, very sacred bird. Yeah, they're also such an underdog. It's like you say vulture, and it's like we need more vultures, and people go like, oh, we don't need vultures. They're like scary, they take, but they're really such a powerhouse, and they're cleanup crew.
We have a listener who reached out to us who's been having lots of vultures land in her backyard and amongst animals all over.
Cherise.
And I have never really looked into vultures until she started sending me pictures of them because they're just massive and so unique looking. And I was just recently driving in like the kind of, I wouldn't say backwoods, but like this wooded area of LA, if you can imagine that. And in going into Encinitas, anyway, I saw a vulture and I was like, wait a minute. And so I had my husband pull over the car and I'm like, what is that massive thing right there? And he's like, that's a vulture. And man, they are so cool to look at in person. They are huge. And you're right. They kind of look a little scary. And I never knew anything about what you just said, but there's so much beauty in them too, because they're just so powerful looking.
They're totally otherworldly.
Yes.
It's like you think you have this life figured out. Just like go look at a vulture. You're like, whoa,
yes.
We're on Earth
That's
together.
So random, Mandy. Talk about synchronicity. Just seeing a vulture like within the past week.
Yeah, in of all places, California.
I'll probably go see one on the way to Walmart later. I mean, I love it.
They're huge. They're so beautiful. Well, Kim, we are truly honored. Like part of me was like, well, we can just tap out now. We can just like, stop Sense of Soul. We've maxed out on our goals because Kim was one we never thought that we would have on. Like we're bowing to you for your work. And so I just wanted to express truly an honor to have you on, and you have guided my life and my journey through your deck and your journal and with my daughter. So thank you for your work. Thank you for your vulnerability, for just being you and trusting someone like me in, the suburbs of Aurora, Colorado, with holding your beautiful deck in my hand. So thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you, Mandy. It means so much.
Shout out to all of you have 2 websites mainly to send people to, right?
You can find me at kimkrans.com or The Wild Unknown. And same thing with Insta. My personal feed is Kim Krans. That's where I share more of my far out work, dreams and visions and left-handed drawings. And then The Wild Unknown has a lot of posts and support around the tarot deck and using the tarot and different cards.
And now it's time for Break That Shit Down.
I would just say, pick up the pen. Whatever that means to you. Just put it to the page. Let it be, and something will be revealed.
I love that. And yeah, that's one of Mandy's favorites right there.
I can't wait to meet your daughter someday. Oh yeah, both of your daughters.
They're pretty cool. Well, Kim, thanks for taking time out of your day to be with us, and can't wait to get your pocket deck to stuff in my bra along with my crystals and everything else. My boobs really aren't this big. It's just all the crap I have in these bras.
It's amazing.
It's such an honor to meet you. Love you. I love everything you do. You have a all-time invitation to come back anytime.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Yeah,
much love.
Hey, did you know that Sense of Soul now has a Patreon where you can get exclusive episodes, mini-series that Mandy and I have been working on for a long time that we can't wait to share with you, monthly readings, Sense of Soul Sacred Circles, workshops, behind-the-scene clips, and much more. Hop on Sense of Soul Patreon right now and sign up.
Thanks for being with us today. We hope you will come back next week. If you like what you hear, don't forget to rate, like, and subscribe.
Thank you. We rise to lift you up.
Thanks for listening.